Hi, this is your personal storyteller. Thank you for checking out my channel. This channel is all about different stories that will sure to pique and intrigue your interests in different genres. I hope you enjoy the story I have prepared for you today. Beneath the Quiet Sky.
Chapter 4: The Weight of Forgiveness. December snow covered Larkspur in silence. The town looked softer beneath winter, kinder somehow. Margaret's memory continued fading. Some days she recognized everyone. Other days she called Elena by the name of her own sister. Yet even during the worst moments, Margaret still smiled whenever music played. So Elena began playing old records during breakfast. Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, songs her mother once danced to in the kitchen. One snowy evening, Margaret surprised everyone by asking Ethan to dinner. Richard nearly dropped his fork. Noah smirked openly. Elena wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Ethan arrived carrying flowers and an awkward smile. Margaret clapped her hands happily. "You're late," she scolded playfully. "Elena's been waiting all evening." "Mom," Elena whispered. Margaret blinked in confusion. "Was I not supposed to say that?" Ethan laughed softly. "It's okay." Dinner became strangely warm after that. For the first time in years, the house felt alive again. Richard even told stories from his younger days. Noah nearly choked laughing when his father admitted he once got arrested during a college protest. "You," Elena said in disbelief. Richard shrugged. "I was young once." After dinner, Ethan helped wash dishes while snow drifted outside the windows. Elena handed him a towel. "You didn't have to come." "I wanted to." She leaned against the counter quietly. "My mother likes you more than me." "She always did," Elena laughed despite herself. The sound surprised them both. Ethan looked at her carefully. "I missed that." Her smile faded slowly. "So did I." The moment stretched between them. Then the kitchen light flickered. Margaret's voice echoed faintly from the living room. "Daniel." Everyone froze. Richard walked into the room immediately. "It's me, Margaret," but she looked frightened. "No," she whispered. "You left." The air turned painfully still. Elena realized with sudden horror that her mother believed she was decades in the past. Richard knelt beside her carefully. "I'm here." Margaret began to cry. "You said you'd come back." Richard's face crumpled completely. "I know." Lena looked away because witnessing her father break apart felt unbearably intimate. That night, Ethan found her sitting on the back porch wrapped in blankets. "She used to tell me Dad was the love of her life," Elena whispered. Ethan sat beside her. "Maybe he still is." She couldn't even recognize him. Love doesn't disappear just because memory does. Snowflakes drifted through the darkness. Elena looked at Ethan. "Why didn't you move on?" He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he answered honestly. "Because every time I imagined a future with someone else, it felt wrong." Her breath caught. "That's not fair," she whispered. "No," Ethan agreed. "It was." Guilt washed over her again, but this time something else existed beneath it. Hope, terrifying hope. A few days before Christmas, Margaret collapsed in the kitchen. The ambulance arrived within minutes. At the hospital, the doctor spoke gently but directly. "It may be time to prepare yourselves." The words hollowed Elena instantly. Richard sat motionless beside the hospital window. Noah paced endlessly. Elena couldn't breathe. Ethan held her hand through the long hours that followed. Near midnight, the nurse allowed them into Margaret's room. Machines beeped softly around the bed. Margaret looked impossibly fragile. Yet when she saw Elena, clarity returned briefly to her eyes. "My girl," she whispered. Elena sat beside her immediately. "I'm here, Mom." Margaret smiled faintly. "You came home." Tears streamed down Elena's face. "Yes." Margaret looked toward Richard. "Don't let them stay angry." Richard lowered his head. "I won't." Then Margaret looked at Ethan. "You take care of her." Ethan squeezed Elena's hand gently. "I will." Margaret closed her eyes again, and though she remained alive for 2 more days, she never spoke another clear sentence. The funeral took place 3 days after Christmas. Snow covered the cemetery in white silence. People from across town attended. Margaret had spent her whole life caring for others. Now the entire community came to honor her. Elena stood beside the grave, feeling numb. When the service ended, she noticed her father lingering alone after everyone left. Richard stared at the headstone for a very long time. Finally, he whispered something Elena barely heard. "I'm sorry." She realized then that grief had aged him more in 1 month than the previous 10 years combined. And for the first time since childhood, Elena no longer saw him as an unshakable force, only a flawed man who loved deeply and failed badly, just like the rest of them.
That is the end of this chapter. Check out the other chapters on my channel. Thank you for watching.